Vaginas are absolute magic, and Ollie is here to give them the respect they deserve. That means shame-free supplements made with clinically studied ingredients to keep your pH in check and your pleasure a priority. Put yourself on top. Go to Ollie.com today. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
The doctor will see you now.
But do they really? Do they see you as a mother who's a daughter and a caregiver? A health nut with a French fry habit? An O-positive geologist named Patty who's here today for a melanoma exam. At Kaiser Permanente, we believe the only way to care for all of you is by seeing all that is you. Kaiser Permanente, for all that is you. Learn more at kp.org.
Kaiser Foundation Health Plan of the Mid-Atlantic States Incorporated, 2101 East Jefferson Street, Rockville, Maryland, 20852.
Hello everyone, today I, Tal Minear, your showrunner, sound designer, etc., am sitting down with our dearly beloved Hannah Wright to talk to her about script editing, directing, and probably producing.
Yay!
Yay!
Hi everyone. It's fun being asked questions. I never get interviewed.
I much prefer to be on the asking questions side of things, so...
Oh, this works out great for everybody then.
Woohoo! Yeah, this is going to be an awesome bonus episode. We haven't decided what we're calling it yet. I'm hoping one of us has like a nice quote that we can pull for the title. No pressure.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, so for this beautiful, beautiful interview here, I've kind of split it up into sections. I wanted to start with script editing because that was kind of the first thing that you really did.
I am an executive producer on this show, but I'm the producer who sends all the emails. So like I've done a little bit of everything, but I'm also like mainly my job was just emailing people. Which is, I realize it's not nothing, but like I can't take credit as the main script editor because that was very much what Stephen did. So Stephen took the text of the book and then put all of the speaker headers on there and split up everyone's monologues and tried to find, mostly what I did was I went through and looked for places where we could break up paragraphs. Alan Bergen is really, really good at reading a page-long paragraph and just, like, going for it and owning it and doing a great job at it. But I didn't want to do that to everybody. So, yeah, breaking up paragraphs, making sure that everyone's lines were differentiated. There were, a couple that Stephen overlooked, which is not Stephen's fault. There's a lot of script. I added tone markers where we were trying to go for particular tones, which backfired occasionally, but also I was the one who put in the marker as bisexual as possible on some of Kareem's line.
The best marker in the show.
I'm very pleased about that. But there's a lot of pieces where the tone could be taken a few different ways, and I wanted to make sure that, especially for the bits of the script, which is the vast majority of the script, that the actors were going to be doing on their own, they understood what our vision was for the piece that they were working on. I also went through and found content warnings. I like to tell people that I had never read Dracula until this last year, at which point I have read it 3 or 4 times.
Speaking of content warnings, how did you decide what to pull for the content warnings?
That was a little bit tricky. So basically, I knew that there was going to be some standard, triggering stuff like sexism and blood and horror. So, I looked for things that were going to be unexpected content warnings. Like, you go into a Dracula podcast, you know that there's going to be blood and sexism and horror. So I didn't warn for any of that. That was kind of, your mileage may vary. Obviously, not all of our listeners understood necessarily what all was intrinsic to the book, but I figured, it's a Victorian novel that we're adapting, and for the most part, the vast majority of people know what to expect as far as that's concerned. What I was looking for was surprise racism, or surprise ableism, because that was the kind of stuff, it was really helpful participating in Dracula Daily last year because I got to see what people reacted really poorly to. I got to see people being like, oh my gosh, Seward is so ableist, or oh my gosh, did they really talk this way about people with mental illnesses, or oh my gosh, that's racist what Lucy just said. And because I saw all of that and what people were finding really troubling and upsetting, I knew kind of going in what to look for. I've been like a little bit over careful, I think, with some of the like Dracula is describing how, you know, his quote unquote race, even though that's fake, is better than all of the surrounding quote unquote races of people that live around Transylvania. Like I'm definitely like, I'm mourning for that, because as like an outdated ethnic stereotype, because it's upsetting to people. It's still a problem in the way that people in Europe treat each other, and it's not something that I wanted to spring on listeners the first time if they didn't know about it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and then there's other stuff. There's like suicidal ideation that we warn about. There's the use of narcotics, which for people who struggle with addiction can be a trigger. Death of a child. I have a friend who's very, very bothered about like child death not being tagged. And like, you know, the last thing I want to do is mess up my friend or anyone else who is troubled by such things. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think we make the child death especially a lot worse in the audio adaptation.
Oh my gosh, yes.
It's kind of my fault, really. I added in all the baby sound.
Oh
that warning especially, I saw it beforehand and I was like, oh yeah, like they are absolutely chowing down on a child there. We should have that trigger warning.
Oh my gosh.
And then as I was doing the sound design, I was putting like these cries in, and then like the cries get cut off. And I was like, oh, I am so glad we have this warning. This is terrible.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Your sound design is, you're so good at it. And it's to say that like what you have done is awful, like it's morally abhorrent and for sure very troubling, but like objectively as sound design it's excellent. So it's awful. Good job.
Thank you. I feel like if you're sound designing horror, you want it to kind of be awful.
Exactly.
Yes.
I think of our mutual friend CSW, who's like, he's glorying and tearing apart cabbages and putting his hands in raw meat to do Foley for his horror podcast. Like,
inspirational.
Y'all are great. I'm so proud of you guys.
All right. Well, I'm going to pivot on the topic of awful to a different kind of awful. I know we just discussed a bunch of the content warnings in the story, and we both know that there were parts of the novel that we slightly modified, I want to say, in our adaptation, which we said we were going to do from the start.
Yep.
I like that we did that. I think it's a little bit controversial to some people. I wanted to basically just ask, well, how did y'all decide what to change?
Well, it was mostly the slurs. You know, like,
yeah.
I think that there's a place for actors acting out racist characters, especially if that racism is interrogated and not portrayed well. You're supposed to tell all kinds of stories, but it's not our story to tell, nor our place to try and interrogate racism without actually adapting the text so that it actually interrogates the racism that the text perpetuates. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I couldn't in good conscience ask an actor of color. Like, there are lines that Mina has where she is saying slurs, and I couldn't ask Isabel to say some slurs and then just not talk about how messed up that is.
Yeah.
So, like, that's mostly it, is I want to respect the time and integrity of the actors that we're asking to act out this text that we know is not a shining example of ethical morality. And at the same time, you know, try not to make a statement that the book isn't making. The ones that we changed were slurs. We also made modifications to the bit of Lucy's letter where she's talking about Quincy Morris and says a racist thing about Othello, which is very much in tune with the sort of things that people would say at the time, but not something that's properly interrogated or even portrayed negatively in the text. So at Beth Ayre's request, because Beth is a professor of literature, we talked about how we could change that or modify that just a little bit so that A, Beth doesn't have to say something racist, and B, we don't have racism that doesn't go unexamined in the story.
Yeah, and I think from an outside perspective, as someone who wasn't really messing with the text, I think y'all did a really good job.
We didn't change many words at all. I think the word count that we changed is, I don't know, less than 30. But there were important words.
Yeah. So moving a little more towards the directing aspect, I was going to ask if your work as a script editor helped you direct, but you already talked about tone indicators and whatnot. So it sounds like in a lot of ways they kind of went hand in hand almost.
Yeah, my main experience with directing has been with works that I have either written or I can go and talk to the author and be like, what does this mean in this bit? Obviously, we can't do that with Bram Stoker. So I took on the script editing part of it as part of the directing. I wasn't going to be present for most of the recording of the whole novel. And so I knew that if we wanted to hit certain points, all we had to do was let the actors know and they'd take it from there. And they did. Oh my gosh, they're amazing.
I wanted to delve more into what the directing process was like. So do you want to just delve into how you and Ella and Stephen did directing?
Absolutely. So the first thing that Stephen did was make a spreadsheet with all of the episodes and highlight the ones that they thought needed live direction, which was extremely helpful for me, the person sending all the emails. So we went over that and we ruled some out, and then I emailed everyone and said, hey, what are your schedules for the next 2 months? And started arranging things. I don't have a spreadsheet at hand, but I did make a call sheet.
Ooh.
Which was very helpful for... I like to think it was helpful for the actors to know when and where and what we were recording at any given day, but it was also extremely helpful for me. So we didn't record all of most episodes. Even the episodes that we recorded all together, we didn't record all of them all the time. There were chunks that we skipped over. It was mostly the important bits were the bits where we were having character interactions, where they needed to play off of each other. You know, the real huge emotional moments. What comes to mind is in episode 88, which is October 3rd, which is The Chunker. And here is where I'm going to say some spoilers. So if y'all want to skip forward like 15 seconds. The episode where Mina gets got by Dracula and is telling about that experience, we wanted to make sure that the recounting of a horrific assault was done respectfully, but also that the various character interactions throughout that whole episode were like on track and they matched each other and that kind of thing. So I think it was about 30 of the 110 episodes that we tried to record together, maybe 25. And the rest we were like, here's a list of scripts. Here's what all your characters in. Go have fun. Have fun, kids.
Did you give them any specific guidelines for those scripts, or was it just like, you know the character, have fun?
Well, that was actually one of the things, the first thing that we did with every actor when we first talked to them over voice was explain, like, this is our vision for the character, this is the vibes that we're going for, these are the notes that we want to hit with this character. And actually, I want to back up here because we didn't have time to arrange this talk with Ella. Like, we just did not have time to grab Ella's schedule and make sure it matched and get on a call together. But I have to emphasize enough that I was, like, very much learning from Ella the whole time. Like, my directorial experience is a fraction of hers, and she's absolutely brilliant.
She's so good.
She's so good. I mean, like, more than half of what we directed live, she did. And she's incredible, and it also helped that she was in the UK, and I am not. And so her schedule matched up with almost everyone a little bit better than mine did. I also want to point out that Stephen didn't want to direct on this project, but... oh gosh, can I tell a story?
Yes, please.
Okay, so Ben Galpin, who is a genius, and we love him. My Jonathan and yours, Ben Galpin. He lives in the UK, but he was on tour in the United States for the vast majority of the time when we were recording. So he's like trying to juggle a tour schedule and like trying to find a back room in some theater in North Carolina where he can like record before he has to go out on stage and do puppets for several hours. And like, he is a real trooper and a true professional, and all of his audio was excellent. Like, he was like, hello, I'm in a random hotel room, but I can hear people walking up and down the hall. Hope that's not a problem. And it was never a problem. He's so good. Anyway, so we wanted to make sure that the first few episodes, which are the episodes you all have heard at this point, which are the ones where Jonathan and Dracula are interacting, we wanted to make sure that those got recorded with Kareem and Ben in the same room. as soon as possible, so that like even if everything terrible went wrong and he couldn't record anything while he was on tour in the US, that we would have the episode set up for the first month or two. And because of that, Stephen ended up doing a lot of directing with Jonathan and Kareem, which was really helpful for me because Stephen is our dramaturge, and he's the one who has the broad strokes vision of what Regarding Dracula is supposed to be. So I got to watch him craft this core relationship between Jonathan and Dracula with Kareem and Ben. And then based on that, I used those ideas that he gave to carry through to the rest of the story and to talk with Ella about what we wanted from performances as well. And that was also amazing. So the ones that say directed by Stephen Indrisano, I was also on the call and I was just sitting back like, yes, tell me more, Stephen. Yes, great job, Stephen. I don't know if that answers the question, but it feels like context for the directing and how it worked. Basically, we did table reads to start with. We talked about characters and characterization with the actors while we did table reads. And then we would do a couple of takes of everything that we wanted recorded live. And then I went through every bit of audio that we got and made note of where we needed pickups. And that's how we did directing.
Hey.
Hey.
I have a really specific question that no one told me to ask, but I know people will want to know. Who made the decision that Kareem would switch to a British accent for that one line? Like, whose call was that? I don't even know.
Ooh. It was Stephen. Okay, so Stephen had the idea, it would be really spooky if, for gothic thematic purposes, the idea of mirroring and the idea of Dracula trying to eat Jonathan and take his identity, if Dracula just perfectly did Jonathan's accent on this line. I narrowed it down to only the saying, and then it turned out, like, we tried to make it so that Kareem's Dracula accent, for lack of a better term, like, would die down over time, but that didn't exactly work with what we wanted. So, yeah, I was the one who said it should only be the little saying, you English have a saying, but Stephen was the one who'd be like, oh, what'd be real spooky?
Yeah, my perspective on that whole thing, you probably know, but I don't know if the other people listening know, is that I'm the sound designer. Stephen does the dialogue editing.
Which means that Stephen takes all of the raw audio and chops it up and makes sure everyone's lines are in the right places, and then makes that into a set of files and sends it to Tal, who adds sound effects and music.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so Stephen does the dialogue editing. You, Stephen, and Ella did a lot of the directing, handling the recordings. So a lot of the time, I'm hearing our characters and our actors acting for the first time as I sit down to sound design. And so I got to that one line just sitting at my computer. Just for my first listen, I always build the texture and like sort of the ambiance. And I got to it and I was just kind of freaking out at my desk. I was like, no, they didn't. It was a really good moment.
Oh, it's so good. It came through so spooky.
I love being such a fan of our team. Like,
right?
I feel like, we all work together, whatnot. We have the same vision, but also like, I just love what everyone else is doing. And I feel like I'm such a fan of the show I help make.
Yeah. It's kind of nice. Like, on my other show, I'm the showrunner and the director and the writer. And the only thing I don't do basically is the sound design. I made that show for me. So obviously I'm a fan of that show. With this show, it's like, I am only a cog in a beautiful clockwork monstrosity that's making a gorgeous horror show, and I love it so much. You're right, it's absolutely right. It's getting to be a fan of the thing that you're making.
Speaking of In Between, a show that I am also such a big fan of.
That is INN, In Between. We'll be crowdfunding on the 19th. Check us out. Try us out. We're a lighthearted fantasy show. It's nothing like Regarding Dracula, except for found family, I guess. But check us out? Question mark?
It's such a good show. I'm so excited about it. But yeah, you just mentioned that there's almost nothing the same between those two shows, except, like found family, excellent actors, whatnot. But you've done directing for both of them at this point.
Yes.
And what's similar and different between the two?
I think what's similar is the strength of the characters. Like, not to brag, but I really like character-forward stories. And because of that, In Between is a very character-forward story. The character development is the whole point. I think that Dracula actually fits that bill really well because, because it is a piece of literature that we're adapting, there is so much depth that can be gleaned that you sometimes just don't get with an audio drama script. I mean, a skilled writer will try to include that as much as they can, but, a typical audio drama script is much more dialogue heavy. So, being able to read into the thought processes in the journal entries gives so much texture and depth to each character. Even, the little one-off characters, oh my gosh, there's an Irish doctor named Patrick Hennessy that Graham plays later in the story. And it's just there is enough in Dr. Hennessy's report to Seward to tell you a lot about this dude. There's a lawyer that Jonathan gets into a lawyer fight with later on. That's actually, it's going to be so funny. I'm really excited for that. I will spoil nothing for y'all, but it's going to be, you thought Jonathan Sims was the jump scare. all that to say, because there's so much depth, it gets to be very character forward in a way that really suits me. When Isabel is what does Mina mean when she says this? Or when Johnny asks, what exactly is Seward saying in this bit? What does he mean by this? I get to be well, you see the text. And this, because there's a lot to glean from, there's a lot, it becomes very functional in a character development kind of way, and it's very easy to direct compared to some things. So that's been great. Yeah. Oh, that's what's the same. What's different is horror. What's different is horror. Yeah, I'm only gotten really into horror in the last couple of years, and that's been mainly through audio drama, which I count myself very lucky for because I love audio horror, partly because I'm a person who doesn't picture things in my head. When I'm reading a book, I don't picture what's going on. I just don't. And because of that, I can handle horror in audio the way that some people can't, because I'm not imagining what's going on in the horror. I'm just kind of living in the head of the person experiencing it, which is scary in its own way, but it doesn't get to me like visual horror does sometimes. And this is really where Ella was so helpful in, I was definitely sitting, it was like the Spider-Man meme. I'm sitting there being the Miles to her Peter B. Parker, watching her direct sometimes. And the way that she talked about, it's more horrifying in this moment if, for example, if Mina is not screaming wildly. It's more scary if she is holding back and you can feel how much she's holding back. It's less scary if Van Helsing is a triumphing hero played by I don't know who's that guy that played him in Van Helsing. Shoot.
I don't know. I can't help you here.
Wolverine guy. What's his name?
The pointy man. He's really pointy.
The pointy man with the Wolverine claws. We're gonna get so many tweets.
I'm looking it up. We can't.
We can't leave it like
end
this.
Without. There's people yelling into their pod catchers right now. Hugh Jackman.
Thank you, Hugh Jackman. That said, it's scarier if Van Helsing is a scared old man with a history of trauma doing his best rather than a wild action hero played by Hugh Jackman. And the ways in which you tone down certain things for horror was a really valuable lesson to me, but B, also a great learning experience for what horror is and how you communicate that in an audio setting through directing. That was I don't know. I feel like I took a masterclass hanging out with Ella. I'm not even joking.
Oh man, you talking about Van Helsing. I finally, at this point, have been sound designing episodes where he's in. And I got to big spoilers for the month of September. Skip ahead again, I guess. When Lucy's mom takes away all the flowers and she's almost dead again. And for the first time, we hear Van Helsing kind of break down and
yes!
Alan just sobbing. I was like, Oh my gosh, it hit me so hard. And I know it's going to hit the audience so hard. I'm going to have to decide if I'm cutting this part out or not, because I almost want them to have the same moment I did of like, oh my God, he's breaking down. Like, he doesn't know what to do. Oh, it's so good.
He's the guy that knows what to do and he doesn't know what to do.
Yeah. Like, I feel like you get really good moments like that with the combination of directing and acting.
Yes. I don't know if I directed Alan Moore or Ella did, but either way, it was like, oh my gosh, the man's so good. He's so good. He's the perfect Van Helsing.
Yeah. Ugh. I'm such a fan of everyone involved in this.
Oh, me too.
Oh, but this is a really good segue.
Oh, good.
Speaking of actors, I'm asking this question like I don't know, but what was the casting process like?
Okay, so yeah, we definitely went in with closed auditions because basically from the beginning we had an idea of what kind of sounds that we wanted. Ella also had Ella was heavily involved with the casting process. She had very good suggestions on who to invite in on the closed casting process. But we had ideas for sounds of people. I think Alistair was always going to be the captain of the Demeter.
Yeah.
The coincidence with the Magnus Archive was too good to pass up. And also Kareem. We didn't audition anyone else for Dracula. Mm-hmm. Kareem was always going to be Dracula, and that was also a Stephen idea. With the rest, I always want to, when I'm casting, usually I have an idea of who I would like to cast, but I always want to hear people kind of in the headspace try and read sides and things, So I was really glad that I got to hear all of these talented people try out for each role.
Mm-hmm.
I was really grateful that we had chosen such amazing people to audition, and also that we found the exact right voice for every person.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. We did open casting for some other roles, as I'm sure, anyone who was following not too long before we started the show, but we don't know many. I think we know maybe one Romanian. And they're a mutual friend.
Yeah, and we cast them.
And we cast them, because they knew we were open casting. But yeah, we did open casting for folks who were locals in places that we definitely just don't know anybody, which was really helpful. It's always helpful to get open casting from people whose expertises are outside of your zone of expertise.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, closed casting was all we needed.
I want to...
Need a holiday gift that will keep her sparkling all year long? Right now, Blue Nile, the original online jeweler, is offering 30% off select jewelry. With experts on hand 24/7 to provide guidance, you're sure to find the perfect piece. And now there's even more to love about shopping at BlueNile.com. For a limited time, get 36-month special financing on minimum purchases of $1,000. Restrictions apply. See BlueNile.com for details. That's BlueNile.com.
Talk a little bit more about the casting process, because I remember we had it to the point where we had all of our auditions in. We had a spreadsheet with each character, each actor, and then notes for all of us, and then we got on a call and made all of our final decisions.
Yes.
And I thought it was really funny how on some characters we were all just immediately yes, this person, period. And then some characters there was more discussion, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, there was a lot of discussion for, I would say, I guess Mina probably got a lot of discussion, right?
Yeah, I remember Mina being the one.
Yeah, because we weren't necessarily sure what all each of us wanted from Mina, and, talking through that, her characterization and what we wanted from an actor putting forth that characterization was really helpful in that case. But then there were some of them where it was just this guy, that one is good.
I remember we all listened to Giancarlo's audition at different times. And I remember
my gosh, Giancarlo.
In our chat, one by one, we would send a blushing cowboy emoji.
I mean, listen. It's a good voice.
Yeah.
If you, by the way, listeners, if you want to hear Giancarlo doing more of that, you should listen to Caravan. I just want to say that.
Listen to Caravan anyway, because it's really good.
It's good is the thing. Okay, anyway, carry on.
I remember we had David All audition for a couple of I'm just gonna call him the main dudes.
Yeah, we had him audition for Seward and for Jonathan.
I remember we were like, this guy sounds like Prince Charming.
Yeah, so we were like, is it too Prince Charming for Jonathan? Does he rate high enough on the Blorbo scale?
Yeah, like, I think it's so funny that David got, like, the secret bonus character.
Yeah, I wrote sides, like, I picked sides and wrote a character description for Lord Godalming for art, but we didn't end up putting anyone in that role just because compared to the other roles, it's very small. But because we had a perfect Prince Charming trying out for everything else, it's like, hey, David, so I can't give you any of the roles you tried out for, but...
It just, it worked out so perfectly.
It did!
Can you imagine if we auditioned Jonathan Sims and didn't cast him?
Yeah, so I believe Johnny auditioned for a couple of roles also. I know he auditioned for Jonathan Harker. Although the things that he is known best for right now are, cynical academic who is majorly depressed, reads aloud notes from ethically dubious institutions. He's an extremely good actor. He was in Second Star to the Left, and he's great. He's in Super Suits as, like, a cheesy announcer, and he's great. Like, please, everyone, just branch out into what all Jonathan Sims has done that's not depressed academic, and you will find a whole world of A, new wonderful audio dramas, but B, appreciation for the man Johnny Sims, who is great. That said, he's like the perfect Seward. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I remember we listened to his Seward, and we were all on the call, and we were like, yeah.
Yeah. That's it. I do want to shove this man in a locker.
Yeah, I do think that was, we had a Blorbo scale for Jonathan, and then we had the, do we want to shove this man into a locker rating for Seward.
I say that with love. Of all the characters in Dracula, Seward is the one who is most like me. And so I naturally hate him. I don't hate Seward, but I do definitely think he needs to be shoved in a locker. That's mostly it.
I do think my favorite part of the casting process was ranking all of our Jonathans on a Blorbo scale.
Yes, yeah, we had a Blorbo scale from 1 to 10. Just how Blorbo is this actor.
Ben is so
He
Blorbo.
is so Blorbo. Oh my gosh. Should we tell listeners what that means? Yeah, so Blorbo is Tumblr shorthand for a character who is not heroic necessarily, but is someone that you deem precious and is possibly a little bit pathetic. And I would say that the damsel in distress nature of gothic heroine Jonathan Harker definitely fits that bill.
We're getting closer to the end of my pre-written list of questions and kind of pivoting more into just let's both talk a little bit from a producer standpoint. I know this answer for me, but for you, what has the reception to the show been like?
So, in some ways, I have been majorly taken aback by how popular this show is. I mean, like, I knew it was going to have a following, and I knew that the crowdfund was going to be successful, and I knew that people were going to like it, but, like, I have to check the Tumblr tag for regarding Dracula multiple times a day to catch up on it.
Mm-hmm, me too.
You know what? Honestly, it's like the responses that we're getting, I feel like we're hitting the right notes, where, like, people are being receptive to what we're putting down. I'm blown away. But also I knew y'all would like it. Like, I knew it would be good. Like, I made this going in knowing we were making something amazing. So, like, on the one hand, it's meeting my expectations in that way, and I'm just sitting here smug, like, yes, exactly as I thought. But in another way, I'm just like, wow, y'all like this? You really like it? Wow, thanks.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
No, I totally feel that. I have multiple other audio dramas. Some are finished, some are ongoing. And already, like, we're 2 months into the show, and already the downloads have doubly surpassed everything else I've done combined. And it's wild.
Yeah.
What's it like running the Tumblr? I ask this as the second person running the Tumblr. What's it like?
It's weird. First of all, the things that people put in your inbox are occasionally buck wild.
Yeah.
Like, Okay, like, all right, let's talk about Van Helsing for a minute. I'm not going to call anyone out because frankly, I don't remember the name of the person who did this. But after we cast Van Helsing and we posted the trailer, and we knew Van Helsing's accent was not good, Alan was doing his best, he had no training. Someone came into our inbox and said, I do voice work and I'm actually Dutch. You should cast me instead. After we've, like, confirmed that we're casting Alan Bergen. And it's like...
Can you imagine if we were like, hey, Alan, sorry, a Tumblr user is Dutch and a voice actor, and we're gonna hire them instead. Sorry that we, like, announced you and everything.
Oh,
like,
gosh.
Ugh.
I don't know. I think that, like, I know about parasocial relationships, and I know that a lot of people in the audio drama community, because it's such a small and inclusive space, often experience some weird and gross parasocial relationships. But also, it was like, what do you think we are that you can just come on in here and do this kind of thing? Also, to allay any fears, we did hire a dialogue coach for Alan.
Yeah, and we were always going to from the start.
We were always going to do that because we know that bad accent Van Helsing is bad. Like, we're trying to make a good show that's good.
Yeah.
This is only an example of the weird-ass things that end up in that inbox.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me this fine afternoon and letting me ask you nosy questions about the show.
Oh, Tal, it is always a pleasure to chat with you and to talk about this cool thing that we're making.
Yes, I love this cool thing we're making.
I do too. It's pretty good. Y'all haven't even heard, like, I've heard everything that they've dialogue edited and sound designed so far, and y'all are not ready. You are not prepared. You don't even know.
I keep forgetting what's been released and what hasn't, because, like, right now it's July and I am editing September stuff, and so, like, I'm deep in those September shenanigans, but then I'm also helping run the Tumblr and trying to keep up with, like, the current events, and I'm so worried, like, one day I'm gonna, like, go on Tumblr and be like, man, that Van Helsing, huh? And people are gonna be like, what? He's not even there, and I'm gonna be so embarrassed. But there's good stuff coming. I can't wait.
Oh my gosh. It's gonna be so good.
Thank you so much for tuning into this part interview, part discussion. I had a lovely time. We didn't find a good quote for the title, but the producers got a bit silly in the group chat, and, well, we had to go with the pun. A big thanks to Hannah Wright for sitting down to chat. Dialogue editing was done this time by Tal Minear, with a little extra sound design on top. This episode was produced by Ella Watts and Pacific S. Obadiah, with executive producers Stephen Indrisano, Tal Minear, and Hannah Wright. And we're still a Bloody FM production. I have to pause for 1 second because my mic is making like a do noise. So I don't know why. So I'm just gonna unplug it and plug it back in. We'll see what happens. Why? Pourquoi? I'll unplug this end now. This end doesn't want to unplug.
Something knocking against the cord or something?
Yeah. Oh, maybe. Oh my! There are balloons in here.
Why aren't there balloons?
Why? I'm gonna eat you. Still? What if I unplug the Focusrite? Okay. Reset. Oh, it's not on the right mic now. Why? Okay. We're good. It's working now.
When it comes to teaching kids and teens about money, practice makes perfect. That's where Greenlight comes in. With a debit card and money app of their own, kids learn to earn, save, spend wisely, and invest. Parents send instant money transfers, create custom chores, and automate allowance, while kids track their spending, set savings goals, and practice money skills they can use today and for life. Get 1 month free when you sign up at greenlight.com/podcast.